official welcome cue.
Excellent. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this fireside chat with Jean McGonigal. It's really my pleasure. I think many of us have known your work, know you really well, but still, for the few of us, can you give us just a brief intro about yourself and, anything you want to share with us?
Oh, sure, yeah. I've been working in the space of game design and game psychology for almost 20 years. My passion is figuring out how to help people apply the same strengths they develop in games to real-life goals and challenges, whether it's the education they're trying to get, or reskilling for the future of work, or treating depression and anxiety, or to trying to help adapt to climate change, and big problems that we can use our gaming skills to solve. And I'm happy to be here today, hopefully to talk about some things that aren't as familiar to the group. My work over the past few years has been really focused on futurist thinking and helping people get better at anticipating long-term consequences of new technologies so that we can do a better job of designing an ethical society.
Awesome, that sounds great. But what are some of the obstacles and challenges you foresee that for those of us who are not futurists yet, and so we can think like you, think like futurists?
Yeah, I should back it up and explain. When I first started working in the field of game design, I was lucky enough to encounter an organization called the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto, California. Just celebrated 50 years of foresight practice, and they saw the work that I was doing. They saw me out in the public saying, we should make games that can change the world, we should give gamers real world problems to solve.
By the way, how did you fall in love with games in the first place?
Oh, well, that's
30 seconds.
That's a long. No, I observed. I was doing ethnographic research. I saw there were a lot of gamers who felt like they had a skill or talent that wasn't being used to its full potential. Like it was just being used in digital spaces or virtual worlds, and I was really excited by that desire to do more. I thought that was great. And so these futurists saw me out there saying, we should make games that do this, we should tap. But I was projecting, I was describing a world I wanted to see. And they invited me to work with them to kind of pick up some futurist skills, because it turns out that the saying, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And it turns out if I wanted a world where gamers were doing more with their skills and games were being brought into real world context more, I should be painting that vision of the future and figuring out how to bring other people along on that journey so we can make that future real.
What are some of these skills, if you can put it in concrete terms, the skills that students these days don't learn, say, in the traditional classrooms?
Yeah, so having the opportunity to hang around with futurists a lot, one of the things that I started to realize is that many people today have a lot of anxiety about the future. Whether we're talking about kids who have a hard time seeing a positive outcome for themselves, they're really mired in the stress of their everyday life, and they kind of feel stuck in that stress. They have anxiety about where they're going to end up. They don't know if they're going to achieve their goals or what their life will look like if they don't achieve a particular goal. So we see a lot of young people who the future doesn't feel like a promise. It feels like a threat. And in our workforce, people are very anxious about the future as well. They're being told that they need to constantly upskill or reskill because their jobs are going to be reinvented with new technology, or their jobs are going to be automated. And this kind of low-level hum of anxiety about the future and uncertainty it actually has a physical toll, right? It takes a toll on our physical health. It has a cognitive toll. We can't focus. We can't perform. And so what I've been doing, both in teaching future thinking at Stanford University is something I've started doing over the past few years, teaching online courses, working with companies like Facebook and Google to help their employees pick up future thinking skills. What the goal of it all is to help people bring the same imagination, the same creativity, the sense of possibility, and the sense of agency that we feel when we play our favorite games, to bring that to shaping the future, because the future is like a game, right? We have to imagine how every move we make will change what's possible. We have to have the empathy to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, another player's shoes, to think, if we make this choice, how will they react? What will their strategy be? What will their response be? How will it affect their goals and motivations? And so trying to think of the future as this kind of massively multiplayer space where we build empathy for other people's futures, where we get better at drawing out consequences, the same things we have to do when we play a game, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, see the game from their point of view, also be able to think out not just 1 step or 2 steps, but 10 steps or 100 steps ahead. That's the sort of space we're in, but at the baseline, it's really about flipping the anxiety and uncertainty that people feel, because you can't make a better future if your primary response to the future is, shock or terror.
Running a startup, it's every day it's full of anxieties. So
yes, it's something you can relate to.
We need that, right? Absolutely. Fascinating. What are some of can you give us a concrete example of technique that you use in class with students?
So recently, we ran a game online for 10,000 high school students, and it was with an organization called Facing History, and we called the project Face the Future. And what we wanted to do was help young people start thinking in advance about some of the technologies that might emerge over the coming decade. So think about 10,000 14-year-olds. 10 years from now, what technologies will just be becoming popular, becoming ubiquitous? If we can give them a head start for thinking about what the ethical dilemmas of these technologies are, what the social risks are to things like truth, to privacy, to our mental health, to our ability to have positive social relationships and avoid social toxicity. So we ran this online game looking at neurosensing technologies, and we were looking for a signal. We were like, what will it be important for people to think about that they might not have on their radar now? And looking at the fact that companies like Facebook are heavily investing in neurosensing technologies that will allow you to share your thoughts and feelings without having to type them or post a photo. It's just going to sense what you're thinking, sense what you're feeling, and send those feelings and thoughts out. Looking at companies like Immersive that are also measuring things like your stress level, your interest level. There are sensors that measure oxytocin and adrenaline. So we were thinking about what would a world be like when social network companies like Facebook are working with these sensor companies. And so we created an immersive game scenario set 10 to 15 years in the future, where there is a social network called Feel That. 1 billion people are on it, and they're just sending out their thoughts and feelings. And it's combined with neurotransmitting devices that can actually stimulate in you the feeling that someone else is feeling. And it sounds a little bit out there, but if you search for this project, we collected a bunch of signals. There are technologies now that can stimulate feelings that you're not feeling yourself. In fact, game developers are interested in using this too to really intensify the emotional engagement of games and storytelling. But so we asked these 10,000 high school students, would you join a network where you could feel other people's feelings? We asked them, who would you let follow your feelings? Would you let your parents? Would you let the person you're dating, your friends? Would you let strangers? Who would you block on this? Would you let politicians feel you? Would you feel people who you disagree with? And we had them spend 2 days immersed in this world talking to each other. If we had this technology, how would we use it for social activism? How would we use it to fight bullying? How would we use it for to intervene somehow in the refugee crisis, to build empathy for refugees and immigrants, and
really relevant and
issues. And we collected 1 million possibilities about this future. And this is the kind of experience that I think is really important now, because obviously this tech is not ubiquitous yet. We need a lot of runway to get ready for it. And particularly we need young people or young employees, the people making these products who are going to be essentially shaping the fate of humanity with the things that they build, to have the time, to have that runway, to think about the stuff before we're founding our startup or launching the product or scaling the network, to really have runway to think about the ethical risks, the social consequences, and to know before somebody's selling us a new tech product or trying to get our company to adopt a new technology, we need to have that foresight and that space as a society to think about it.
How have students reacted to this so far, and what are some of the initial takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they were the one thing I've learned from working with young people, at least of this generation, is that we cannot overestimate their willingness to share. We talk a lot about privacy right now in the ethical technology space, and we need to do more to protect people's privacy. And even at a global level, I'm actually not convinced that privacy as a common good is actually going to be as protected or cherished as some of our other common goods like mental well-being or the need for truth in society, a common set of facts. These kids they saw the upside of sharing as so much higher than any possible risk of someone else knowing what they were feeling or thinking. And in fact, the desire to be seen and felt is very strong, especially in young people. They want to be heard. They want people to see them.
There's definitely a cultural shift. I can't imagine 20, 30 years ago, when if you tell people the kind of data, private data are going to be shared online, and, versus now, how young people, the next generations, how they embrace their data and the upside you just mentioned. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So, a lot of the work that I'm doing now, we're thinking about facial recognition as well and how that's tying in. We're seeing a lot of schools are using facial recognition technology. China's at the leading edge of this, looking for the emotions, the attentiveness of students, it's interesting, a lot of times we talk about this technology and it seems so obviously dystopian to a lot of audiences, especially Western audiences, but the more time that I spend globally looking at different use cases and people's actual reaction to it, I'm always surprised at how open other cultures are to this kind of what might be considered invasive in the United States, and it makes me think that here in the U.S., we're going to be following behind and probably falling behind a lot of things that seem invasive now, which is why it's so important that we start these conversations about if we're inviting these technologies into our homes and our public spaces and our organizations and our schools, how can we be very careful about safeguarding the things that we do commonly or universally value?
So now it seems only natural to segue to a new project you have been working on, a project called Ethical Operating System. So
yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, the Ethical Operating System, it's a free resource. If you search for Ethical OS, you will find it. It's Creative Commons produced, so anybody can use it for anything you want. So I encourage you to take it around with it. But it's a set of gameful tools designed to help us think through ethical consequences of augmented reality, virtual reality, facial recognition, some of the new big data practices, some of our engagement design strategies, sort of addictive layer of our different apps and experiences. And we're looking to start a public, inclusive, gameful conversation about if we adopt these technologies in these contexts, what do we think might happen? Who benefits? Who's at risk? Why would somebody invite this technology into their home or their life? To have more empathy for how these sort of technologies can become popularized and have these runaway consequences when they seem so obviously dystopian to us, to build empathy for why they might be adopted, and to game out the consequences together. So it's a PDF with 3 different, essentially, gaming opportunities. We have 14 scenarios of risky futures we might find ourselves in that you can use immersively. We have a risk mitigation checklist where you can kind of game out this technology with this risk zone and look for surprising outcomes. Anyway, it's a useful tool. we're teaching it at Stanford. It's being taught at a lot of the MIT, Columbia. They're starting to make it required reading for computer science students and design students, using it with a lot of the big Silicon Valley companies, startup companies. We have founders who are making it a condition of receiving investment from VCs that they have to work through this toolkit so that hopefully they're building companies that are safeguarding our common goods. So that's the thing I'm most excited about.
It's super refreshing. As a founder who have talked to investors many times, I don't think the topic of ethics has come about.
I mean, it's
at all.
Yeah,
so,
it's.
so
I mean, it's
really good.
It's more so. I mean, people don't want to accidentally become the world's biggest supervillain. Tech companies don't want to be the new tobacco company, and you know, it's finding that balance between anticipating the worst, but still trying to make things that solve problems and improve the fate of humanity.
So I can see, tech giants in retrospect, or at least at this point, be receptive to ethical OS. But what about upcoming startups? How do you envision that they would react to this having this balance between mapping something out a decade and versus short-term growth demands and urgency and just staying alive?
Yeah. I mean, when you're just founding a company, there's a lot of visioning process that happens, right? And investors and potential allies want to know, if your company is successful, what does success look like in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? How scalable is this? People want to invest in technologies that have the power to affect 1 billion lives. And so you do have to be thinking at scale, and it will take runway to get to that level of impact. So we found that founders are very receptive in the sense that they're already thinking about the best case scenario outcomes. And this just brings a little gravitas, a little balance, and nobody wants to be put in the shoes of, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg at the peak of their success to be looked at as a supervillain. So I think there is a desire for at least to see if this can work, if we can game out the future before it happens, so that we have more runway to safeguard our common goods.
Excellent. I know you must have mentioned this in the Ethical OS toolkit, but any concrete practices that you would recommend to the entrepreneurs in this audience, like how they combat some of these risks? So once they identify, say, my company falls under one or more of these particular risk zones, let it be, machine ethics or algorithmic biases, and what are some of the concrete practices that we can adopt? And
yeah, I mean, there are lots of concrete things. I mean, one is that there's an actual checklist that we encourage organizations to use anytime they're launching a new product, to actually bake it into the product requirements document, answers to certain questions. We talk about just hanging some of these questions or risk zones in public spaces around the company, doing brown bag lunches. One of the most sort of practical ongoing habits is collecting and sharing signals within an organization. So signals of the future are things that are already happening that suggest a way forward. They might suggest a risk that's emerging that we need to try to stop, or they might suggest a new kind of solution. So if you're interested in, you're thinking about the Internet of Things, you might see that Mozilla is sponsoring a PhD program for a healthy Internet of Things. And you can go get a PhD now specifically in how do we design the Internet of Things so that we're not living in a dystopian future. You spot signals like that, you collect them, and then they start to become resources. They start to become levers. Maybe we want to hire somebody coming out of this PhD program, or consult with them, or send one of our teams to participate in this program, or at least track their research. So you start to collect these signals, they become resources, you fill up your own ongoing organizational toolkit, you know who your allies are, and just as a very practical thing, people who are using the toolkit are using the hashtag #EthicalOS on social media. So if you're just like, I'm curious to see what are the biggest risks that people are flagging this week, you can go on Twitter and look for EthicalOS to see.
You're really creating a very positive network effect. Yeah.
Very, very much looking for this to be an inclusive process. We don't want tech companies to be responsible for regulating themselves, but we don't want policymakers to feel like they're at the mercy of tech companies to do the right things. We don't want consumers to feel like they have no say in what gets designed. We don't want young people to feel like they're at the mercy of whatever the grown-ups build.
Right.
So this is a space for, again, it's a massively multiplayer conversation and project.
How has the tech industry embraced this? Any early adopters and names you can share?
I mean, the TechStars incubator is having all of their founders work through it. We're seeing it's mandatory reading for Stanford University's design school students now. A lot of the big tech companies were working with kind of privately to implement. So rather than name the companies, I'll say that the fields of virtual and augmented reality, I feel, are very alive now with ethical considerations. People creating virtual reality spaces are very concerned about not repeating the errors of the social media phase where anybody can harass anybody can talk to anybody. The toxicity that emerges with the kind of accessibility and one-way communication and permissions. So we're seeing, I'm very optimistic that people in virtual reality are much more aware of possible toxicity, and within augmented reality, people working at the leading edge of augmented reality seem much more aware of both hate and harassment, but also truth and propaganda and disinformation. In augmented reality, when you can attach, I could attach information to you that anybody with my app could see, or to this physical space. Who gets to say, who gets to augment a space or a person? And one of the interesting signals we saw of this was with Pokemon Go, where Niantic had decided certain physical locations would be Pokestops in the game, didn't get permission from people who, run, whether it's a public space, like a museum, or an individual house that happens to be right next to a Pokestop and now has hundreds of people hanging out at all hours of day and night. That was kind of one of these early interesting signals of what if a company decides to augment a space that I live in or am immersed in. What are my rights as somebody who is affected by something that is as simple as a digital layer, but that actually affects my quality of life? So without naming names of particular companies, I will say people in augmented reality, virtual reality are really trying to get ahead of these issues in a way that I think we missed the boat on with social media and social networks. So that's heartening.
Excellent. That's really great news to hear, especially given how immersive, how real these environments compared to the social network.
Yeah.
I would say. So it's all the more important to develop these foresights early and seriously. So with the remaining minute, I'm going to throw a surprise question at you. So I noticed there are women in this audience, and can you share a bit, maybe a few words of encouragement about how women can work in the tech industry, how to maintain a healthy work-life balance, based on your own experiences?
Oh, but I see men in this audience who
As well.
also feel like they may want to maintain a work-life balance. No, that's an interesting question. I just
someone as
it's good.
and
No,
productive.
because my husband works in the tech industry, and we're both parents of 4-year-old twins, and we both struggle with wanting to make tech that will make a better world for our kids, but also wanting to be present for them. What will I say? I will say, in general, for my career, the best thing that the best habit that I've ever developed for my mental health and for my social well-being is to constantly be looking for work that other people are doing that I have no involvement in or stake in to shine a positive light in. This is a practice I started in graduate school, I try to make it a habit every day if I can, whether I'm sharing with people inside my organization at the Institute for the Future or with students at Stanford or on social media publicly. I try to elevate or amplify somebody else's good work. It's great for feeling good. You get to help people who might not have as much visibility. You get to make relationships with the people whose work you're supporting. Sometimes they hear that you're supporting it and reach out. And you just kind of feel like a part of something bigger than yourself. Whether if you're doing a startup or you're really deep in the work that you're doing, it really helps to see the bigger picture of all the people who are trying to create positive change or make a difference in the world. So that's like my hack, my daily hack. If I'm having a stressful day or a bad week, go find someone, or my work is not going as well as I would like it to, go find someone else who's doing something cool and try to give it attention and gratitude. And so for everyone, I would encourage that as a habit.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.